Good afternoon, hello, and welcome to Higher Ed Live, the live weekly web show all about the world of higher education. I'm your host, Seth Odell. We are all about digital development, professional empowerment, bringing you the content you want to help the job you do, well, get a little bit easier, make you do a little bit better, make your life a little bit easier, maybe, just maybe, let you kick back a little bit on a Thursday afternoon and have a little bit of fun. We're talking all about email marketing today. It's a subject that, well, it's been around for years and years, but let's be honest, as an industry, we haven't quite nailed it, and that's saying it lightly. But there are some gems out there, and there are some great tips, tricks, and things that you should know, and, we're going to talk all about that today. So let's dive into this a second. But first, I want to say thank you to the sponsors that help make Higher Ed Live possible. Higher Ed Live is sponsored by Integral, the creators of the Schools app on Facebook. Check out that webinar series about how private social networks can increase yield and retention. That happens next Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. We sent a tweet out with that. If you're following the hashtag Higher Ed Live, you know you saw it, and I know that you are, so I know that you did. We're also sponsored by Omni Update, the leading web content management system CMS provider for higher education. The company's web CMS OU Campus, well, it's secure, it's scalable with great tools and features, deployment flexibility, and an awesome user community. In fact, it was the highest ranked CMS in customer satisfaction in the EDU Guru survey. So if you need a CMS, what are you doing watching the show? Go check out OmniUpdate.com. I'm kidding, watch the show. But immediately after, check out OmniUpdate.com. We are also finally sponsored by Scavenger, a Google-funded mobile game about going places, doing challenges, and earning points. See what Ray Junko is doing at Lock Haven University to use badges as a method for learning. Let's be honest, guys, Scavenger's doing some pretty cool stuff, and this is right up there with the tops. I tweeted that out. You saw it. I know you did. Click that link, check it out. Thanks to Scavenger for being part of today's show. Welcome back to Higher Ed Live. I'm excited to dive in and talk all about this, but you know what, guys, we're just going to go really fast. I appreciate your patience today. It is about 4:15. Got a little bit delayed. Got stuck in a meeting, which is good. We're here live at Southern New Hampshire University in Manchester, New Hampshire, as always, doing a lot of good work. And because of that, it's always hard to squeeze the show in. But we managed to make it happen, and we're going to keep going, chugging right along, and dive into the weekly five stories from around the world of higher education that you should read, think about, note, look at, do something with, because, guys, these stories are worth following. So let's dive right in. Number one for the week. Interesting announcement came out earlier this week from Chegg, and they were introducing the new e-textbook reader. And this is a big move from Chegg. Chegg, a massive player, obviously, in higher ed. And they were offering some pretty cool things. What I liked about it was that it's more than just an e-textbook, that it's an opportunity to essentially engage with the content, take notes, share information, do all sorts of different stuff. That's pretty cool. We've talked a lot about ebooks before. This is a big step in that direction. But this was not the only announcement today. If you guys have been online, you probably noticed that Apple has come out with a monster of announcement as well. So it is officially the week of the ebook, but it's a lot more than ebooks. They're calling them iBooks, and it is really something more. Apple is really rethinking educational content delivered in a text format, doing some pretty interesting stuff. They've got the major players involved. Let's be honest, guys. If you want to make a dent in higher ed, it's all about partnerships, and Apple's got it. Right now, they have partnerships with almost 90% of the market share. The world for ebooks is changing. It changed this week, so check that out as well. Pretty interesting stuff. Definitely worth following. Next up, number 3 of the weekly 5 this week is an interesting story out of the San Francisco Chronicle about UC students that put together a proposal that they sent to President Mark Yudof at the UC system in California, saying that they want to pay no tuition, but instead agree to pay 5% of their annual income for 20 years after they graduate. And Yudof, to his credit, is saying he's checking it out. Be surprised if it goes anywhere, but guess what? The economics are behind it. If you actually see the numbers that they're running, UC could make money, and then students also would only be giving 5% of whatever they end up making. So while some may not pay too much back if they don't have lucrative careers, others that take off, well, they'll be paying back a lot more than they initially would, but in theory, would be in a place to do so comfortably. Guys, this is a really interesting thing. What we're seeing here now is traditional institutions completely rethinking, at least in this case, the cost for higher education and the deliverable and how that's going to actually connect. So, hey, I say interesting, props to them for thinking differently. Doubt it'll go anywhere, but at least it's an interesting idea going on. Next, this is a story that I'm surprised did not get more coverage. Mitt Romney, obviously running for president, is very, very tied into the for-profit industry in education. I'm going to leave it at that. I don't want to get too political on the show. Read the article, though. It is very interesting, the relationship between Mitt Romney and the for-profit online arena. Leaving it at that, but definitely check it out. And lastly, going on, the big SOPA issue this week, we all know about it. Wikipedia went down. We all learned a lesson, which was, my gosh, do we use Wikipedia a lot every day. The SOPA issue is obviously a very serious one. Syracuse University, their iSchool, I think it's essentially called, went black for it. You've probably heard about it already. Their information studies But, props to them for doing it. I hate to say this, but as a former TV news guy, I got to say, good PR plan, guys. Way to get in the headlines. But beyond that, more importantly, good job taking a stand. Hats off to you for that. So that's the Weekly 5. Let's move right on to the unsolicited shout-out of the week, where I shout out a person, place, thing, or idea. Why? Because I can. It's my show. That's what you get to do when you have your own show. So this week's unsolicited shout-out, well, we were talking about Chegg. We're talking about Apple. Guys, I'm not going to say that what happened today at Apple is not going to be the future of e-textbook learning. It's pretty amazing stuff. But this week's unsolicited shout-out, it's got to go to Studio by Purdue. Because if you look at what Apple's announcing, it's not that far off from Jetpack. And this is what Purdue has been investing in developing in-house themselves. So yes, maybe Apple has the market share. Maybe they have the brand. Maybe their model's going to work. But hats off to Purdue for being ahead of the market curve on this. Guys, so often in higher education, we're a little bit behind the ball. This is a prime example where we were definitely not, at least in Purdue's case. So hats off to you, Purdue. Unsolicited shout out once again, Kyle Bowe and the whole rest of the team over there for doing good work and really pushing the needle even when the rest of the industry maybe is lagging a little bit behind. Guys, we're talking email marketing, and I am not alone. In fact, I have two guests today. First, in studio, Carlin Morissette. No, Carlin Borisianko. There we go. I'm still learning it. My supervisor, boss, as she'll remind you at SNHU, she'll remind you a lot. She's got more experience with email marketing than I do directly, so I wanted to bring her on the program as well. But we also have a very special guest joining us online today, and it is Georgia Price, email marketing manager at KIXEYE. They're a hardcore social gaming company responsible for popular games you guys probably heard of if you're into the gaming community, something like Backyard Monsters, Battle Pirates, Desktop Defender. But Georgia, you have experience both in higher ed and now a whole lot of email marketing experience as well.
Yep.
So first, welcome to Higher Ed Live.
Thank you.
We're really excited to have you on the program. I'm excited to hear your experiences, and especially because the fact that I think it's really important in higher education, in an example where we're maybe not so forward-thinking, that we're looking to someone who understands our industry but is also working outside of it at an industry that I think is probably a little bit faster paced.
A little bit.
Just a little. And guys, if you're hearing a lot of noises, it's we work in a mill yard here in New Hampshire. It's kind of getting noisy above us and all around us, but bear with us. So we're talking email marketing. It's a loaded topic, and in higher ed, it's one that, in a weird way, has almost been dismissed over the last couple of years. It was discussed a lot. People never kind of really jumped on it, and then all of a sudden, it seems to me that it's become just kind of passed on. We've just accepted where we are. Well, today we're going to reflect on where actually are we with email marketing. What can we do? What are some tips, tricks, things we can do to do a little bit better? And maybe it's time to really rethink, reevaluate, and finally do it right? I don't know. That's what we're going to talk about. So, Georgia, let me toss the first question out to you, which is, can you just tell us a little bit more about your experience with email marketing with KIXEYE so people have an understanding of your background as we move on with the conversation today?
Sure. Well, I actually started doing email marketing for Monster.com. After I graduated college, I ended up at a startup that Monster acquired and started doing basically your typical batch and blast newsletters, some education lead gen email. So that's sort of where I got my background and was, I guess, trained in my email marketing. Went off to Virginia Tech for a year, where I got my higher education kind of experience, worked in residence life and fraternity and sorority life, came back to KIXEYE, and basically been doing email marketing here for about 7 months.
Very cool, very cool. Well, I'm excited to hear about your experiences concerning something that you do, all day, every day. When we look at the state of email in higher education, I don't know, Carlin, you've presented on email a lot in higher ed. Where would you say is sort of the state of email today? Because again, it seems like one that's sort of almost dropped off the radar.
Yeah,
lately.
I've been doing email marketing in higher ed since about 2003, and I have to say it's pretty sad. It's almost exactly where it was when I started doing email marketing. And, one of the reasons that I kind of moved on from presenting on it was because I was getting completely frustrated with the fact that nothing ever seemed to change. So, I think it's a sad state of affairs. Email newsletters that aren't targeted, aren't segmented, aren't really thought out for what the value is for the user. Still kind of the norm out there, and would really love to see us move forward.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Being more on the recipient end and being around the conversation, it seems like one that hasn't really made a lot of progress. So as we get into talking about the conversation today, I'm just going to start throwing out some topics, some ideas, and maybe we can just discuss them. So the first one is like email service providers. I'm curious, Georgia, do you guys handle your emails yourselves? I know that do you use like a Constant Contact or a MailChimp? How do you guys physically actually do your mail distribution?
We have an email service provider. We work with Responsys. I've worked with Silverpop and ExactTarget in the past, which are all three rather large ESPs. Responsys is great because it's kind of everything you need to do. And I think that's for us, it was a better solution than building an in-house program at the time.
Yeah, I think one of the things is at UCLA there was an in-house solution that was built, so it was okay. Try to be polite here. I mean, Colin, what are your thoughts too? I mean, as far as higher ed is concerned, I mean, I'd have to think it makes more sense just to why rebuild the wheel.
Right, exactly. There is absolutely no reason for higher ed to be doing email in-house. There are a lot of great service providers out there. ExactTarget and Zorapop, two great choices, pretty big for what a lot of higher ed needs are. Most places can go to someplace like a MailChimp or a Vertical Response, iContact, Contactology, get more or less exactly what they need.
Well, and I definitely it just makes sense, and it's a lot, especially from the experience of seeing the back end of that stuff. You can just get so much more information, a lot more data, and I think that's a really just a smart decision. I mean, why spend so much time before you can even get things out the door when then just use a tool that's valuable and ready for you? And let's talk content first for a little bit, because that's kind of where the things really start with email. That's what it's kind of all about. So if you guys don't mind, I know there's the broad issues of content, and we're going to talk about those. But let's kind of just break things down a little bit. So let's start small, like email subject lines. I mean, is this something that you think about since you're using email every day? I mean, how much do you analyze and think about like what you're saying in a subject line?
All the time. We talk about it a lot. I think that subject lines are kind of I guess you could say, a hotly contested subject when it comes to email. Everybody has an opinion about, should they be long? Should they be short? Can you say the words free? Can you give a $? Tons of things that other internet service providers used to block. They're not blocking anymore. You get the spam people that use the word free, try to get in there. But for us, we just do a lot of testing and kind of just see what do our users want. I think that's the best solution for anybody when you're looking at your subject lines. There isn't a one-size-fits-all. I think that you can say subject lines, content, everything. There's no one-size-fits-all for your program. So try testing out short subject lines, long subject lines, exclamation point, no exclamation point, Unicode graphics, and see what works for you. So we think about it a lot. We subject line test every email that goes out pretty much.
Can you break down a little bit more? What do you mean when you say you subject line test? I mean, is this something where you're doing A/B testing, where you're just starting, like, how do you compare one subject line versus another to kind of understand which one's more successful?
That's correct. So we'll usually do a 50-50 A/B split and see which one has a higher open rate. You can also, a lot of email service providers have tools where you can send to 5% of your list, do a 50-50 split within 5% of your list, and then whichever one wins, the ESP will send out the winner to the rest of your list. So you're getting the most benefit out of your subject line tests.
That's awesome. I actually didn't know that. That's kind of a cool...
And you can do that yourself, too, if your ESP doesn't provide that. You can just take 5% of your list and send that, on Monday, and then pick the winner Monday evening, Tuesday, send to the rest of your list.
Cool. Yeah, I got a great comment coming in on Twitter already, too, saying that someone's using MailChimp, then they always A/B campaign testing to determine open rates and stuff. So, yeah, it's a great option to be able to use these services to kind of test. So let's dive in a little bit more, because what I want to do is talk about kind of the details of an email, and then let's back up and have that broader conversation. So one that is issue, and I'll talk to both of you, is Colin, let's start with you, too. What are your thoughts on images in emails? And then we'll send it back.
My thoughts on images are just keep it short and clean and simple. And I think a lot of people kind of load images into emails thinking, that the design of the email is going to be make or break. But in the experience that I've had, the simpler, the cleaner the email, the more click-throughs you're going to get on it. And just to get back to subject lines too, a lot of people think that subject lines, is going to be short and sweet, and that's the way you're going to get your best opens. But people don't usually take the step beyond opens when they're thinking about testing subject lines. And there's data out there to show that if you have 50 to 60 characters in a subject line, you might get less opens, but you're going to get more click-throughs because people know what to expect when they're opening the message. So you have to view it as more of a total package.
That's a really good point, because if you could just say, well, this subject line got people to open the email, but ultimately there's a goal in the email. Maybe it's a call to action or for them to do something else. So ultimately, if they're not doing the last step in the funnel, there is a question of whether or not the first one was a success. I could see why you might kind of think it was a success and maybe ultimately it wasn't as much.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, Georgia, what are your thoughts on how do you guys use images in emails for you? I know with what you guys do with gaming, it's probably a little bit different than higher ed, but can you kind of talk to us a little bit about what that looks like and works for you on your end?
Sure. Well, I think all of our emails are very image heavy. We always have a text version as well in case somebody has that as a preference with their ISP. But the thing to remember with emails is that most ESPs aren't going to have images displayed as the default. So you're going to have to click display this image, or you're going to have set it up, say, all right, always display images from Backyard Monsters. So it's really important that you format your email so if a user isn't going to turn images on, they can still understand what you're trying to get across.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think, and it just that's a one thing that most of us know if we use when we open emails, saying that display images or not, and that's definitely an interesting one to think about. This is a broader question than that I have. As most people know, I work a lot with video. So incorporating video into emails can be really great. It's a really great opportunity to sort of say, here's some extra content you want to watch. In my opinion, it's a nice soft extra for emails. But how do you incorporate videos into email? Whoa, sparkling over here. My question is how do you do that? I mean, you obviously can't embed a video directly into an email. So are you putting a still image so it looks like you can hit a play button? And I'll throw it to you first because we're strobe lighting over here. I don't know if it's look at that. Our camera's going a little crazy. So I'll throw it to you first. What are your thoughts on videos? How do you incorporate that?
Just like you mentioned, doing a still image and doing like a play button over the image has been a way that I've seen people sort of, in a way, fake the video element, and then you click on that, and obviously it's going to take you to your site with the video. I've also seen a lot of success with animated GIFs, as you can embed an animated GIF in an email, and there's some really beautiful ones out there that aren't, you think of animated GIF, you think of, cats and things that people make and things that are silly, but I've seen some really great retail ones where it will be maybe it's selling a dress and it'll be the model walking down the runway for a few steps in this dress, and it's very well done. It's good looking animated GIF, and it looks like a video in the email. So that's a way to get around it.
Yeah.
And most ISPs will render animated GIFs. Obviously, some won't, but major ones do.
Interesting. Yeah. Would you say anything, Carmen, for videos? I mean, that's my experience has been putting a play button on it, make people get the experience that they're clicking on it.
Exactly, more or less the same thing. And I would say, what I usually did was I put a little bit of line of text under that image, just so people, if they didn't turn the images on, they could still see it. They could still take that call to action if they wanted to.
Well, so I have a lot of questions about how you measure success and things, but I think it's important already just to pull this conversation back a little bit. So let's talk about bigger strategies, because I think this is really where we're going to get to the core of people understanding some tangible takeaways. So one issue that we'll talk about in a minute in higher ed is I think list management is a disaster in our industry.
Yes.
So let's go to an industry that I think probably gets it a little more right. Talk to us about how you manage lists, how you kind of organize them. How does that work? Because I think that's really going to be one of the key points of the conversation today.
Well, for us, it's kind of an interesting scenario because so our games are social games, and our biggest platform is Facebook. So we're actually collecting your email addresses from Facebook when you install the application. So the way we're managing our list is to really just do a lot of segmentation. We have a ton of data about our users, how far they're along in the game, how many hours they've played, how much money they've spent. And so really drilling down that way has been the way we've managed. As far as bounce rates, my personal opinion is to be pretty hardcore about that. One hard bounce, you're off the list. I don't want you on. We deadwood pretty often because I just don't want to be sending to inactive emails and ruining our deliverability.
Well, can we just back up for a second and talk about that? Because that is something I have not heard talked about a lot. So if you are seeing a high bounce rate, you will choose to remove someone from a list because it's more damaging to have them on the list, not open anything, than to just keep spamming them and hope someday they wake up from their coma and realize that they actually love their alma mater.
Yeah. Basically, I think that a lot of people, they want to say, like, oh, look how big my email list is. But if you have a large chunk of that email list where the emails are inactive and people, they're not opening your email, and they probably will never open your email, it's time to cut them loose and get rid of them. I mean, one option is you can send an email out asking for people's preferences. Maybe you're sending them too much email. Maybe it's not the right time. You need to send the right email with the right message at the right time to the user. And if they're not interested in that, allow them to opt down, or opt up to what they want.
Mm-hmm. So, Carl, have you seen anyone in higher ed actually removing people from lists?
No, and it's really sad. It's a point I made at a couple different colleges I work at, and I'll tell you, for one of the colleges I worked at, it was regular that 50% of the emails that we mailed to would bounce. If we're paying per message, how much money did I waste?
Yeah,
Because I couldn't get them off the list.
So this is good. The first bullet today, the question is, are you removing people from your lists? And it's clear then that the information is in that you should. As an industry, I think we largely aren't. But I think the argument I would imagine you hear is, oh, well, these people are our alums, we still want to keep them. But there's already a problem if you're not able to reach them. And you're not fixing it by continuing to do the same thing when you're not reaching them. So, that's a really good point. So I want to hammer something else, though, too. You're talking a lot about saying, send someone an email, ask them what their preferences are. So here's my question. You send out that email, you get a whole bunch of preferences back. How do you then take all those preferences and make sure that the people that say I want every day or I only want once a week, that they're getting that? How do you sort of segment these lists in a way that you can actually kind of understand people's needs and actually meet them?
That's a lot of question. I think, you have maybe you have multiple versions of the email you're sending. You have a daily version, you have a weekly newsletter or a monthly event that you're sending information about. And you need to make sure just have your list automatically updating, I think is the easiest way. I mean, the least work you have to do is the best. And by having an in-house, like a preference center that will help you learn more about your users and what they want. If they want to receive information about alum events, but they don't want to receive information about please donate to our foundation, you can get them what they want. And then you can also, at the footer of your email, when you have an unsubscribe link, for instance, you could have a opt up or opt down, opt up or down option, so that you're not maybe getting rid of a user completely. You're saying, okay, you don't want this email, but maybe you want these other ones.
And so just to clarify, Carmen, too, that since I don't, again, have as much direct experience, I did email marketing probably, honestly, for about 18 months at UCLA. It was part of something I did, and it was very light. So when you have these different preferences, this is something that's largely going to be managed within whatever third party you're using. So it's not like you're manually doing a lot. It's just a manner of asking the questions and making sure it's kind of working.
Right, but I mean, when I did email marketing for colleges, I usually segmented based on the data that I had in the system. So I hate email newsletters. I think they're one of the most useless waste of time, and that's just for college admissions. It's probably different for the gaming industry. So I never did them, so never had any preferences like that, but I would segment by things like, where are you in the admissions process? What state do you live in? Have you opened this message before? Have you opened but not clicked through? Things like that. So you try to target your message down so it's much more focused to the user, so they're more likely to find value in it.
So let's talk about again. We'll talk about newsletters, and you brought up a good point. That is something that everyone, the layman term, people that don't know email marketing, is always like, well, should we have a newsletter? And it's, in higher ed admissions, it's like we should have a newsletter. But what's the lifespan of a prospective student really? How many? This is not it's not like a life cycle email or newsletter. And even then, I'd question. So what about the gaming community outside of higher ed? Is there a different preference, do you think, on like weekly newsletters, or is that just a kind of a content dump?
I think if you do it right, it doesn't have to be a content dump. If you're providing information that is maybe exciting, it's fun. Traditionally, email newsletters have been so dry. They've just been, here's this information, click through to our website, click through this other dry email, or dry article. You can make it fun and you can make it exciting, and so it's not just filler for an email inbox. I actually, when I was applying to graduate school, a little over a year ago, I applied to a school and they opted me into their admissions newsletter, and it was very well done. It looked great. I ended up not going there, and I was taken off of the list, and it was a good experience for me. It gave me a little insight into the school, and I appreciated it. Another school I applied to, I just looked back actually today, and I didn't go there, or I didn't even apply. I just requested information, and I had gotten 62 emails from them within 6 months.
Wow.
And a lot of those too, come to this open house, and the school is in Texas and I live in California. I live in California. I requested information. I'm not going to come to an open house in Texas. Well,
and that's the biggest issue, and that's the issue I think we have in higher ed is that, there's some serious damage too in doing that. And one example I'll say is I very much enjoyed my time in college, but I have unsubscribed from everything my alma mater sends me. Everything. Everything. And the reason is because they didn't segment content at all. They kept sending me information about the soccer team and about the School of Education. And I said, listen, I literally emailed them and I said, I don't have time for this. You need to only give me stuff about the department that I was in. And you can email me, I'm not kidding, 3 to 4 or 5 times a week if it's about my department. I care about my old faculty members. But this goes even to a bigger conversation because I would donate money to my old department. I would do things, but I never had a real sense of loyalty to the overall institution. And yet they kept sending me stuff to the point that I've unsubscribed from everything. They don't have any contact information for me. And it's sad because, I still talk to the faculty members via private email, and now I won't even allow them to send an alumni magazine to me. So it seems like, and this is because they just didn't do the legwork to do that. Looking at higher ed, you're kind of like, there's a lot to lose by doing email marketing wrong.
Absolutely. I think, the thing I tell people is you are letting your customers know how much you value them every time you send them a message, and you ask for a little bit of their attention. And you really have to ask yourself, is this worth it? Why would this customer respond to this? It's not about you as a school. It's not about what you're doing, how cool you think you are. It's about what your customers, and by customers I mean prospective students, alumni, whoever you might be targeting the message to, what they're getting out of it, what value is in it for them.
That's a really good point. I couldn't agree more. And there's a lot to lose, again, especially because in higher education, that life cycle, once it's lost, it's really hard to reconnect. So let's talk though about, even if you do things right, even if you did it right, which few people do, I would imagine, at least from my experience, you're still going to have issues of unsubscribing or opting out. So Georgia, how do you handle that? What are your thoughts? It sounds like if you're pulling people that bounce off your lists, do you welcome unsubscribes? Is that something that, how do you manage that when someone wants to opt out? Obviously, since you need to allow them to do so.
Right. Well, I do respect the unsubscribe. I would rather have somebody unsubscribe than hit spam, right? 'Cause some people, they'll get an email and they maybe don't. They're maybe lazy, or if it's an email and you can't see the unsubscribe link at the bottom, it's not obvious how to do it, and they hit spam, and that's not good for your deliverability overall. So, if someone wants to unsubscribe from my emails, I'm not going to take it personally. I would give them the option to opt up or down. So we have multiple, here at Kickside, we have different kinds of email that we're sending our users. And maybe someone doesn't want an alert every time another player attacks them in the game. That's fine, but they do want the alerts for when we put out new features. They want a weekly update of new features. And that's great. You can encourage them to keep on your email list, but get what they want.
That's a really good point. There are a lot of options that you'll see when you want to unsubscribe, where it says, do you want to unsubscribe from all or select which ones? And I've run into that before. But I'll say that to me is not the norm. It's more of the exception, unfortunately. But when I do find that, I generally don't unsubscribe from all. You're right. I'll go through and I'll say, I really don't want this, but I do want that.
Right.
So it brings up another broader question I want to throw out to both of you. So Carl, I'll start with you, since it's the higher ed version, and in general, move on to list ownership. And what I say by this is that, if connecting with someone is valuable, then the fact that they've, in theory, essentially given you permission, if they don't opt out, to communicate with them, then their email address is valuable to you. Within an institution, I'll start with in higher ed, what are your thoughts on list management? At UCLA, our experience was we had the advancement office, and they would give anyone that asked for it these emails, but then there was issues on how could they opt out back. Is this something where, a whole institution with thousands of people should say lists are accessible to anyone, or should you be protecting these and who can actually essentially use them to connect?
Yeah, absolutely not. I don't think lists should be accessible to everyone. And when I worked at Dartmouth, there was actually, I want to say there were 8 or 10 offices that were doing separate email marketing, all off the same list. They never talked to each other. Alumni would tell stories of getting 6 different emails on the same day, all from different offices that said different things. It was crazy. And, you can't always bring that in under one person. That's going to be a political nightmare. But what I would say is try to, I hate suggesting that you form a committee, but
Note it.
But just try to get everyone in the room every once in a while. I remember on my last day at Dartmouth, I got everyone in a room and I said, look, I am leaving in T-minus 2 hours. I'm going to tell you everything you need to know to get your acts together, and just start talking to each other and get a master editorial calendar. Know when each other is sending out emails, who's the audience, et cetera, et cetera.
And what are your thoughts on Tuesday? How do you view list management? Is this something where anybody at the company's like, hey, give me all the lists that you turn that over? Is this kind of the most valuable asset you have?
I think it's very valuable. It's not shared. We have multiple games. We're not going to send information about game A to users on the list for game B. That's just, these people have opted into something specific, and it's a bad user experience.
And no, I have seen that happen a lot. Again, it happens all the time. I get a lot of these emails. So here's the question: is it as simple as the fact that we, and I say we figuratively, meaning a broader industry, are approaching email marketing short-sighted? Because it constantly seems that, at least in my experience, you approach email marketing with, we have this event coming up, you need to get people, or we need to tell people about this. But it's very rarely like we want to build a relationship with someone where we can constantly communicate important information that they deem important to them and keep fostering them. So we got the boss just went by, made a face at us. I apologize through the window. So I mean, how it seems to me, is that the issue, that we're short-sighted with email marketing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We think in terms of what are we sending out next week, not what is their long-term relationship with this user. And even when you have things that are shorter term, like admission cycles, you might be communicating with that student over 3 to 4 years. You need to have a longer-term plan for how to do it.
Yeah.
And email's a really personal thing. I think that's what people forget, is that's why we have these strict canned spam laws, and that's why Europe has double opt-in laws, because email is personal. That's why people get so upset when you're spamming me, you're sending me too many emails. It's personal. It's we're giving them mail. The mail you pick up at the post office is personal too, and it's addressed to you. And that's the relationship we need to foster and not take advantage of just because email has a very good return on investment.
Yeah.
It's cheap.
So now, here's another question that I have regarding email, which is that I have to imagine, this is an outsider kind of looking in, that mobile has changed some things a little bit. I mean, for me, I keep my phone in my pocket 24/7, and if you can get past my spam filters, which majority are through Google, most of my accounts, but not all, if you can get past them, I'm not only checking your email, I'm checking your email fast. I mean, forgive me, but my poor wife deals with me checking my emails like pretty much 24/7. Like, leave it next to the bed just in case it buzzes. So for me, literally, I mean, first thing I do in the morning, first thing I wake up and I check my email and I see all these emails. It's very personal. So how do you think the mobile phone is it changing things, or is it still the same fundamental issues that we need to think about?
It is definitely changing things. I think in a big way it's changing. We really have to rethink email design. We have to, like Carlin was saying earlier, making emails clean and easy to read, and maybe going for a simpler design, because you're reading on a little device, and you know what? People have fingers, and it's hard to press a little text link with your big finger on your iPhone, and really thinking about what does that email look like? Is it rendering correctly on an iPhone, on a Droid? And what's it going to? If I click this link to read an article on your site, is your site going to render very well on my phone? It's just a lot of different elements.
That's a really fundamental issue. That's a good point, too, that whatever you're asking them to do, make sure that it works. Not just, there's a great comments coming by Sherpy saying she's they're mobile optimizing. The email's awesome. And then I guess it's a good point they're saying is that then you also make sure that the next step is mobile optimized, too, right? I mean, you don't want to run and get stuck halfway.
No, absolutely. But I would say for higher ed, higher ed still has so much of a long way to go in terms of even doing email correctly. I wouldn't want to recommend at this point that a lot of people dedicate a lot of time to optimizing for mobile, frankly, because they have to do step 1 through 20 before they get to step 21.
Very good. So, very true. And when we talk about doing these different things, it brings up one interesting thing that I want to throw out there too, which is just organizational structure. So in higher education, it seems relatively rare that you have someone who just does email marketing. It's viewed as like an extra that anybody can do, or some people have access to. What is your experience doing email marketing full time? I mean, how much do you think you benefit from the fact that this is what you do and you focus on every day?
I think it gives us the ability to create that personal relationship they were talking about and focus on a customer lifecycle strategy rather than these one-off emails saying, come to this event, or here's some news, or here's the latest update, please donate. Having a dedicated person makes you think about the larger strategy, and that's what I do all day is I think about, all right, we're sending these emails now, what are we going to do next? How is this rendering? Who's looking at it? What's the next step? Are these people spending money? Are they not? Are they clicking spam? There's so many different facets to email marketing that I think higher ed institutions could benefit from having one person, although I imagine that can get really complex with all the different departments. But I think if you try to automate as much as possible, you really will take a lot of the work off of yourself.
Yeah, and I think, here's the thing. There are so many colleges out there right now that are creating full-time social media positions. And email was around a long time in higher ed before social media ever became popular. So why are we... I see nothing wrong with that. I like my social media position. I'm not going to complain.
Me too.
But, that investment should have been made in email as well and taken just as seriously as any other communications tool out there.
Yeah, and I think there's a point, too, that if you are a campus that's spread out... I found, too, that there were really, this is a poor term, but like email ambassadors. There was never even like, I am the email person for this division. And maybe that's not what I do full time, but they're letting me designate enough time that I can learn it and I can actually work on it. It was more just like, who can physically do it? And I found that in my experience, email's been approached much more about physically doing and a lot less about thinking. It was dismissed as just send out an email. Who can physically knows how to log into Constant Contact or MailChimp and do it, as opposed to who can actually approach this with strategy. And I found too, some places offices have 3 or 4 different people have access, and then how are you possibly going to actually be strategic if everyone's just doing this, on their lunch break in the middle of a busy week?
Yeah.
So.
Sorry.
No, please go ahead.
I think one of the problems is social media, and it's very sexy right now. It's very now. It's like, we want to do this. This is where everybody's at. But you know what? There's more people who have email addresses and have Facebook accounts. So why are we ignoring all these people? Email has the best return on investment of any other marketing strategy. It's like $40 ROI to every dollar spent. So why aren't we, trying to put more of our assets there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really good point. So I want to move on a little bit, talking about measuring success. So we had a question come in. I'm going to pull up. Let's start with this one next. Saying, when I was email marketing, doing email marketing, we found the magic spot for opening Wednesday mornings at 10 o'clock. That's still true. So let me, pull it both up. Let's talk about, start with time of day, but then let's really bring this back out and talk about tips, tricks, strategies, what works best. So Carla, the question to you, what are your thoughts for hire with time of day?
Well, here's how I approached it. I always found horrible rates for emails on Fridays, but if you waited a couple days, they might pick up on Monday when people came into the office and started opening them. I never sent them out on the weekends, and it wasn't necessarily that I got worse rates. It was more so that I didn't want to have to do work in case something went wrong. A little selfish. But you know what? Here's the thing. Like, every time an article comes out that says the best day to email is Monday at 10 a.m., guess when everyone starts sending out their emails? And it instantly becomes the worst day. So it's kind of like you have to do your own internal testing and just figure out what works for your users. I mean, think about, if you're emailing high school students, when are they getting home from school? You might want to be the first ones in their inboxes. They're going to go right to that computer and check their email. If you're emailing alumni, they're probably checking in the first thing in the morning. It's just kind of common sense.
Yeah. And also think about what the content of your email is. If you're emailing about maybe an event in the morning, that might not be the best time to email. Okay, this event is happening in a week, because they might open it and then never look at it again, forget about it. Maybe that's sort of an end of the day thing when you're getting home and you're relaxing, you're not thinking about work. Oh, I'm going to put this on my calendar right now. And like Carlin said, it's all about doing a lot of testing and seeing what your recipients, what they like. Also, another great feature of some ESPs is that they can monitor when people are opening your emails and send throughout the day, so that if I always open my emails at 6 a.m. because my phone is next to my bed when I wake up. But maybe someone else getting the same email always opens at 12:30 in the middle of their lunch break. And getting that email at that sweet spot at that right time can make a huge difference.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it makes a lot of sense too to do your own research. And obviously, if your audiences are different, it's going to get you different results. Mm-hmm. So let's talk then from the email marketing noob who really never dove into it a lot. How do we measure success on the surface level? People talk about open rates and click-through rates and all these things. What do you use? I mean, this is what you do all day, every day. How do you define success? How do you measure it? And do those kind of terms mean anything? I mean, is there some validity to those numbers, or are they really just surface level fluff?
A little of both. Obviously, we want high open rates. We want high click-through rates. But seeing as we're a gaming company, we also want to see high retention. We want our users to, we want them to be spending money in the game. So we want that email to trigger some sort of engagement within the game, going and attacking another player or upgrading a ship or things like that. So for us, success has multiple variables. Open rate and those send metrics are just the surface layer to it.
It definitely sounds like, again, much more of a long-term way to measure success versus we talked earlier about the short term of this one email versus long-term. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think kind of the same thing. I always measured it by what was the call to action. What did I want this person to do? So for when I was working in fundraising office at Dartmouth, it was, did this person make a gift? And that was a pretty easy ROI calculation. When I was at Norwich, I was in the admissions office, and basically my goal was to increase applications. And I did a study at the end of the year that basically found that 33% of the applications that were submitted online that year came as a result on someone clicking on a link in an email. So it was taking a much more broad look at it instead of saying I had a 15% open rate or whatever and that happened to be, and saying that was successful or not.
I think internally you need to decide what your key metrics are, what your key performance indicators are, and then go off of that.
So another kind of moving back, larger view level, within your organization, how do you connect with the rest of marketing? I mean, do they view you siloed, you do your own thing, or are you constantly supporting traditional campaigns and maybe they're doing, whether they're doing banner ads or whatever else they're doing? Is it always in line with you? I mean, how do you fit in with the mold? I'm curious.
Yeah, we're all one team, the marketing team here, and we're a smaller team. We're a smaller company at the moment, growing really fast, but we're all trying to make sure that our message is aligned, so that the emails that are going out say the same thing as the Facebook ads, for instance. That an ad we put on the BART trains, for instance, goes along with what we're doing. So,
which makes sense, but I think it's something that, again, from my limited experience, I found that it didn't always work out that way. That there's times where email wasn't connected, and that's the tough thing is that we need to. I've always found that however people are connecting with us, it's usually on multiple platforms through different devices, and unless that's consistent, there's always going to be a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
So we're kind of talked about a lot of stuff here, and some of it's big, some of it's small. As we slowly kind of wind a little bit, I want to know, are there any other tips or tricks that either of you can think of that maybe they're really small, maybe they're bigger, or anything else that people can do that they may not think about with email?
Do you want to go?
Well, the first thing you do is always segment. Number one tip, you should never be sending a mass email out to people, I don't think, unless it's something really, really large, like an application deadline or financial aid deadline or something like that. The instances are very rare. So that's number one. Number two, just think about what your users want. And that's really, we do this every day. We're marketers. We're supposed to put ourselves in the position of what our people want. So give them what they want rather than what you think is cool about yourself on that particular day.
Yep.
Okay, so are there anything else with fonts or other, putting a URL, do you write out a URL or hyperlink or any little things too or anything?
I'm a big fan of the CTA goes in the bottom right. Users read in a Z. So if you end with your CTA, that's where their eyes are going to go. It's after they see the headline, they see the body copy, they look at the image, they finish with the CTA. That's sort of my go-to. But I think email marketing has a lot of rules, and I think it's really time for everyone, higher ed, gaming, everybody to kind of start trying to break those rules. Do interesting subject lines. Do something that you wouldn't normally do. Put an animated GIF in there. Try something that's a little more risque or cheeky. Why not go for it? Because there's so much email going out right now. You really need to stand out, even if it's something that user wants.
Absolutely. So now, as we start to we're winding down the conversation here. First off, thank you for coming on and sharing all this information. I really appreciate it. From someone on the outside, who's been in higher ed, who's on the outside, how important is email marketing? And I want to preface this by just saying the reason is because this conversation has been happening in our industry for years and years and years. And the folks that are watching, by the way, great back channel, a lot of great content comments today. I found that a lot of institutions have just accepted the mediocrity of where this is at today. How important and valuable is email marketing, and why do we need to put our foot down and finally say, let's actually kind of get our butts in gear on this?
Email's not dying. Email's not going anywhere. It's kind of was a hot trend last year to say, Facebook messaging is going to take over email. It's not. Email is growing, and the money spent on email is growing. The money being made off of email is growing. So let's finally put some of our own money there and invest in a really good ESP and start sending some really well written and thought out emails and think about the whole customer life cycle. It's time to really realize that it's not going anywhere. there's something crazy like 3 billion email addresses in the world. Like let's use it. Let's go. Let's do it. All of our students have email. Let's make use of it.
Yeah, I was telling Seth earlier today, there has literally been an article written in a major publication every single year since 2003 declaring the death of email. I mean, it's ridiculous. And, you know, I did a panel a while back where, well, no, there was a panel before me. I was doing a presentation for the e-recruitment forum, and it was all these big admissions people, and they were all talking about how valuable, we're flashing again.
Flashing again, it's okay. We got it.
So they were talking about how valuable electronic communications are and how critical it is to the mission of their institution. And the moderator asked them, so how much are you investing? And there was a blank stare across the room as none of them were investing any money. When you value things, you invest in them. That's really the bottom line.
Great. And before we kind of stop a little bit, we're flashing again. Let me throw to you. A question came and said, do you think that email is growing for high school students, though? I would assume that the gaming community skews younger as well. What have you seen with email usage for, the under 18 crowd?
You know what? They're still using email. Maybe it's not in the same way because they think of it as maybe email is for business, but you still need an email address to sign up on Facebook. You need an email address to sign up on Spotify. So it's there. They have to have it, and maybe they're not using it the same way that someone in a full-time job is using email, but they're going to, and so we should start using it with them early.
And good question coming in from Kyle via Twitter. Also, got there was a. Geez, we're flashing again today. Sorry about the camera issues. Last summer, there was a Staymates conference where they did a Teens Talk panel where they talked a lot about teens' use of email. I know it doesn't help much now, but I'll try and find the link and put that out there because it was prospective students talking about how they used email with schools. It was really valuable if that's specifically what you're looking at is high school targeting. So that was pretty valuable. So, Carla, something's talked about a lot. Yeah. How much do we need in higher ed to rethink what we're doing?
We need to completely rethink it. We've needed to rethink it for the last decade. And, I really hope that there are at least a few champions for email that get out there and, just be that person at your school to go and say, we can do better.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, listen, Carla, thank you for joining. It wasn't much of a commute since our offices were down the hallway. But, Georgia, thank you for your time as well today and coming on and talking. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, listen, guys, I appreciate you watching Higher Ed Live. This has been Inside Email Marketing. I hope that you guys have learned something. If nothing else, you got fired up, and let's be honest, there were a lot of tips and tricks covered today, so it's something to keep in mind. We're going to be back next Thursday. Why? Because it's a live weekly web show. That's what we do. And next week's show is going to be crazy. It's going to be all about empowering your higher education career. We're going to be interviewing a lot of higher-ups in higher ed. We're going to have the tough conversations. If you want to get ahead in higher ed, it's the best thing to do to quit. Seriously, we're going to talk about that. Is how do you get ahead? Do you want to dress the part or not? What do you need to do? Do you got to toe the line or do you got to be radical? What do you need to do to get ahead in your higher education career? Why does the best talent quit? How can we keep them? What can you do to get ahead, boost that salary, have some fun, get some work done? It's going to be a fired-up show. If you saw my show last year about bleeding talent, well, let's just say it's going to be energized. It's going to be edgy. It's going to be worth watching. So thank you guys for tuning in to Higher Ed Live, the live weekly web show about the world of higher education. Thank you to our guests today. Thanks to you. Thanks to our sponsors. Until next time, I'll see you guys on Twitter, on Facebook, wherever you want to find me, and over, of course, at higheredlive.com. Take care.